When I was 17, my stepsister called me a prostitute. My father didn't even blink. He just threw me out. No shoes, no explanation, just a scream. "You're a disgrace." That night, I slept on a church bench and thought that was rock bottom. But years later, when they called again, they didn't ask if I was alive. They asked me to save them. Ever been erased by your own family, then asked to clean up the mess they made of you? Before we dive in, where are you listening from tonight? And if it were you, what would you have said? I stood in the mirror that morning, applying just enough makeup to pretend I'd slept. Kyle's voice drifted from the kitchen. He was humming, probably cooking oatmeal again, but I couldn't respond. My fingers froze over my collarbone as I noticed that faint mark near my shoulder, the one no one else ever seemed to see. Just a thin, lightened scar now, but my stomach still knotted every time I touched it. That scar didn't come from a fall or an accident. It came from a night I still couldn't believe was real, and yet, every time I looked in the mirror, it stared back. 10 years earlier, suburban Ohio. I was 17, trudging home from school with my backpack weighing heavier than usual. The early spring air had that mix of damp grass and exhaust fumes. I remember thinking how everything felt slightly off that day, like the world was holding its breath. When I pushed open the front door, the air inside was colder than outside. Not in temperature, but in silence. No music, no TV. Stepmom wasn't yelling on the phone like she usually did. She was in the kitchen, slicing carrots like a robot. Her back to me, movements stiff, knife tapping the cutting board with too much force. My dad stood near the hallway, pacing. He didn't look at me, just kept walking back and forth like he'd been doing it for hours. His shoes left faint tracks on the tile, back and forth, back and forth. I didn't say anything at first. Something in the air made my chest tighten. I took a step forward, and that's when he exploded. "You think I'm stupid, Odalyn?" His voice boomed through the quiet house like a gunshot. I stopped dead in my tracks. "What? You think I don't know what you've been doing? Sneaking around at night, meeting strange men, using God knows what?" My mouth opened, but no sound came out. He stepped toward me, face red, veins at his temple pulsing. "Leah told us everything. Everything." I blinked. "Leah?" "Dad, what are you talking about?" I finally managed to say. "Don't play dumb." His voice dropped, like he was trying not to yell but couldn't help it. "She saw you, leaving at night, coming back hours later, dressed like," he sneered, "like a damn prostitute." I couldn't breathe. "I've never," I started, voice cracking. "I don't even," he cut me off. "She said you're using drugs, selling yourself. That's what you've become? In this house?" I turned toward the kitchen. "Ask her to say it to my face, please. Ask her to," "She's not the one on trial here. You are." I looked to my stepmom. She still hadn't turned around. "Did she show you anything? Pictures? Proof?" I asked, my voice sharper now. "Did you even ask?" "I don't need pictures," he snapped. "I believe my daughter." I froze. "I'm your daughter." He looked at me then, really looked, and something in his eyes broke me. "I can't even look at you," he whispered. "You're a disgrace." I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stood there as he pointed to the door. "Get out." There wasn't a bag already packed. No yelling match. No throwing of things. Just silence. My legs moved on their own. Upstairs, I grabbed my duffel bag, the one I used for gym class, and stuffed it with what little I could think of. Jeans, hoodie, a phone charger I wasn't sure would even work. Downstairs again. Still no one said a word, not even when I opened the door and stepped out into the cold. It was still light out, but the wind had picked up, and I had no jacket. I walked for what felt like miles, not knowing where to go. Eventually, my feet took me to the Methodist church a few blocks over. I sat on the bench outside, my back pressed to the brick wall. My phone was at 4%. I stared at the screen like it owed me something. An answer, a name, a reason. But there was nothing. Just a quiet blue glow. That night, it dropped below 40 degrees. I curled into myself, arms tight, hoodie up. Somewhere near 2 a.m., I noticed something scratched into the wooden bench under my hand. "You still matter." 3 words, sharp, crude, maybe carved by a bored teenager, maybe meant for someone else entirely. But they stayed with me. The next morning, I walked back to the house. I didn't expect forgiveness. I just wanted to see if maybe, it had all been some twisted misunderstanding. The locks had been changed. I stood there for 20 minutes, pressing the doorbell with the hope of a child knocking on heaven's gates. Nothing. Mrs. Fitz from next door opened her blinds. She looked at me, then pulled them shut. I wandered the neighborhood like a ghost. No one called, no one texted. At the public library, I plugged in my phone behind a stack of outdated encyclopedias. My hands shook as I opened Instagram. Leah had posted a story, one of those black screens with cryptic white text. "Some people finally get what they deserve." She didn't mention my name. She didn't have to. I sat there watching the charging bar slowly creep up, but I didn't feel stronger. I felt erased. No one had asked me anything. No one had listened. And just like that, I wasn't Odalyn anymore. I was a cautionary tale in someone else's story. I didn't know it then, but that bench would become my shelter, my school desk, and my therapist for the next 2 weeks. I woke up stiff every morning, the wooden slats biting into my back, the cold making it impossible to feel my fingers until the sun warmed them up around 9. I'd stretch, slowly, always checking to see if anyone had seen me. Sometimes an early jogger passed by, eyes pointed straight ahead like I was invisible. Other times, someone would slow their step, frown, and then keep walking like they were late for something that didn't involve me. That first full day, I tried to wash my face in the gas station restroom across the street, but the attendant banged on the door after 2 minutes. I didn't go back after that. Instead, I walked to the library 3 blocks down. It opened at 10. I'd sit on the steps until they unlocked the doors, pretending I had a reason to be there. I guess in a way I did. Inside, I'd find the farthest corner and bury myself in books, any book, just to avoid the world. I reread Little Women, To Kill a Mockingbird, even some outdated algebra textbooks, not because I wanted to, because words were warm and they didn't ask questions. Food came in bits. Crackers from the vending machine near the bus stop, half a granola bar I'd forgotten in my backpack, sometimes a piece of fruit someone left behind. I rationed like it was war. Hunger always stayed just far enough away to keep me conscious but close enough to make everything blurry by nightfall. That bench, it stopped being just a place to sit. It became my everything. The words carved into its wood, "You still matter." I read them every night like a prayer. I didn't know who wrote it. Didn't care. I needed to believe it. If I said it enough times, maybe it would become true. One afternoon, maybe day 4 or 5, time blurred, I heard the shuffle of footsteps behind me. I was huddled under my hoodie, eyes shut, pretending to nap so no one would ask me to leave. A soft voice said, "You look like someone who needs to know this isn't the end." I opened my eyes slowly. A woman stood there holding a sandwich in one hand and a bottle of water in the other. She was maybe in her late 60s, wrapped in a cardigan too heavy for spring. Her face wasn't kind in the sweet way some old ladies look. It was kind in the way a tree is, quiet and rooted. "I'm Mrs. Halston. I help out at the church down the street," she said. "I'm not going to ask questions. I just wanted to give you this." She handed me the sandwich. Turkey and Swiss. I didn't say thank you. My throat burned too much. But I took it. Ate it slowly, like it might disappear if I moved too fast. She sat down beside me, not close enough to scare me, just enough to make sure I didn't think she'd vanish like everyone else. "I know that bench," she murmured. "I've seen a few souls sleep on it longer than they should have." I didn't respond. She didn't wait for one. Before she left, she placed 3 things beside me: a phone charger, a folded paper bus pass, and a small business card with the church's address. "There's a shower at the center if you ever want it. No sermons unless you ask," she said, standing, "but don't wait too long to start believing you deserve better." Then she walked away. I stared at those things like they were foreign currency. Pride kicked in hard. I wasn't some charity case, but I took the charger. That night I plugged it in at the library and finally turned my phone back on. A dozen notifications popped up from social media. My fingers hesitated over the screen, pulse quickening. Curiosity won. Leah had been busy. She'd posted a photo of herself in a prom dress captioned, "Grateful for clarity. Sometimes truth hurts, but it frees you." One comment, "She really did that to her own sister? Dang." Another, "That's what happens when you're trash and try to act classy." I kept scrolling. There were threads. Anonymous, of course. Bits and pieces of the same lie she told my dad. Some even added their own flair. Heard she hooked up with the assistant coach. She was always weird, like hiding something. I dropped the phone. I sat frozen in the corner of the library, blinking at the beige carpet, breathing slow and shallow like I'd been hit in the stomach. I made it to the church center the next day. Not because I was ready, because I needed to scrub the smell of shame off my skin. The girl at the front desk handed me a towel and pointed to the back. She didn't ask for my name. She didn't ask why my eyes looked like I hadn't slept in a week. Inside the bathroom, I locked the stall and leaned against the wall. From outside, I heard giggling. A voice I didn't recognize said, "That Leah girl on TikTok is savage. She exposed her sister big time." A second voice chimed in, "Yeah, I follow her. Her videos are wild." I slid down to the floor and covered my ears. I thought I'd already been erased. But now, I wasn't even invisible. I was infamous. When I returned to the bench that night, it felt different, smaller, colder, but the charger was still in my coat pocket. I gripped it hard. "I'm not what they say I am." I whispered it like a shield. over and over until I believed it enough to sleep. I tried to outrun the lie, but it had legs longer than mine and a voice far louder. The bus pulled away from the church stop in Ohio just before sunrise. I had nothing but the small duffel bag I'd packed the day I was thrown out, Mrs. Halston's bus pass tucked inside my hoodie, and the phone she helped me charge fully for the first time in days. I stared out the window, watching familiar neighborhoods give way to empty stretches of road, then unfamiliar town signs. I didn't know exactly where I was going. I just picked the last stop listed for the day and hoped it would be far enough. The town I ended up in didn't have much. One gas station, a diner, and a community center with a faded mural that looked like someone started painting hope, but gave up halfway through. It was somewhere in Indiana, not far from the Ohio border, but it felt like another country entirely. At the shelter intake, I gave a fake name, Marie. Just Marie. No last name. The woman at the desk nodded, like it wasn't the first time she'd heard a half-truth from someone who didn't want to be found. They placed me in a dorm room with 3 other girls, 2 of them pregnant, one twitchy and pale, with track marks on her arms she didn't bother hiding. I didn't ask questions, and they didn't ask mine. At night, the air filled with muffled crying, soft swears, and the occasional scream from someone reliving a nightmare they couldn't shake. I kept my back to the wall, and my eyes open longer than I should have. I didn't sleep as much as I faded in and out of something like exhaustion. By the 3rd day, I started asking myself something I wasn't ready to face. Did they think I belonged here? One afternoon, a caseworker named Jenna told me I had to pick a GED prep course or volunteer work. I chose the class, less talking, fewer chances of someone asking who I was or where I came from. That's when I met Mr. Rubin. He was in his 50s, ex-military haircut, wore jeans and button-downs like someone who never quite settled into civilian life. But his eyes, they didn't scan you like a threat. They listened. He didn't smile much, but when he did, it looked like something he had to earn back from life. He didn't ask why I barely talked, why I sat in the farthest seat from everyone else, or why I flinched every time someone's phone rang. Instead, he gave us our first assignment. Write an essay about something that shaped who we were. I almost didn't do it. But that night, in the dim dorm light while the girl in the next bunk hummed to her unborn baby, I pulled out one of the shelter notebooks and wrote. I titled it, The Girl They Chose to Erase. I didn't name names. I didn't even mention Leah directly. But every word bled with what I couldn't say out loud, that someone I once shared a room with had taken my life, twisted it, and fed it to the world. I turned it in with shaking hands the next morning. Mr. Rubin read it silently at his desk while the rest of the class worked on math sheets. When he was done, he didn't say much. Just slid the paper back toward me, looked me square in the eye, and said, "You are not what they say you are. And I'll vouch for that." That sentence shouldn't have meant much coming from someone who barely knew me, but it did. It cracked something inside me, not enough to feel safe, but enough to sit a little straighter in my seat that day. 3 days later, it happened. One of the girls, Lexi, loud and wild, always on her phone, was scrolling through TikTok during lunch. She gasped, then turned her screen toward me. "Oh my God, this your sister?" she asked like it was nothing. I didn't want to look, but I did. There Leah was, perfect lighting, lip gloss shining, her voice syrupy as she said to the camera, "So, this is the story time you've all been waiting for, about my fake sister who lied to everyone and why I had to expose her." The caption read, "Sometimes you have to protect your family, even if it hurts." It had over 40,000 likes. I didn't hear most of what she said after that. My ears rang. But the comments, those I saw, and they burned. Trash always smells eventually. She was sleeping with a teacher, right? Selling herself for drugs. Typical. Where's her family now? Oh, right. They kicked her out. I bolted from the room and didn't stop until I hit the girls' bathroom down the hall. I locked the stall and leaned over the toilet, retching until nothing came up but acid and spit. My hands trembled as I clutched the edges of the sink after, trying to calm my breathing. That night I sat in the shelter's common room long after everyone else had gone to bed. The old TV buzzed softly with static, and the only light came from a hallway bulb flickering like it couldn't decide if the darkness deserved to win. I thought about running. Again. Maybe to another state. Change my name. Again. Disappear deeper. But then I remembered Mr. Rubin, his voice, that look he gave me, not pity, but belief. The next morning, I came into class late, eyes red and shoulders heavy. I didn't say a word. He didn't ask. As the rest of the group filed out for break, he stopped me with a simple sentence. "Running won't unmake the lie," he said. "Only living will." I didn't answer, but I didn't pack my bag either. That night, in my bunk, I took out a new notebook and started writing. Not for school, not for grades, for me. Because if no one else was going to keep track of the truth, I'd better start doing it myself. I didn't know it then, but those pages would one day be the only thing keeping me from legal ruin. It started with a cheap spiral-bound notebook I found in the donation bin near the shelter's laundry room. The cover was faded red, the kind of red that looks like it gave up trying to be vibrant. Someone had scribbled, "Keep out," on the first page in purple marker, probably a kid who thought privacy came from warnings, not locks. I tore that page out and began writing. At first I just listed the facts. The date I was kicked out, the exact words Dad used, where I slept that night, who looked away, what I ate. I sketched the bench, I described the cold, but it didn't stop there. I kept going. I started building a map. Who had said what, where they were, what time. I drew little arrows between names. Leah's name sat in the center like a spider, threads stretching out toward people who reposted her videos, teachers who never asked questions, even the girl in the shelter who showed me that TikTok. Every day, I added another piece, and on every other page, in small cursive letters I kept returning to, I wrote, "I was there. I saw it. I was not what they said." Sometimes I'd repeat it 20 times, sometimes just once, but always, it was there, like a whisper that refused to die. On rainy afternoons, I took my notebook to the public library a few blocks away. The computers had time limits, but if you asked the front desk nicely, they'd restart your session once or twice. I created an email account and started typing out copies of my handwritten entries, sending them to myself, date-stamped and backed up. Just in case. I didn't know what I was doing really, but I knew that people like me don't get to scream and have others listen. We don't get microphones. We get folders, paper trails. We get quiet, and we document. In the quiet hours between class and lights out, I started looking up words I didn't fully understand. Character defamation, minor consent, legal emancipation. They sounded bigger than me, like weapons I didn't know how to wield, but I wrote them down anyway. One Thursday evening, after GED study group, Jenna, the shelter coordinator, called me into her office. Her tone was calm, but something in her eyes said this wasn't about missing chores or bunk inspections. "There was a call for you," she said. My stomach dropped. "From a Marvin Dane, says he's a lawyer, from your old school district." I didn't say anything. My breath got shallow. I thought, what now? Another accusation? A lawsuit? Was someone suing me for ruining Leah's reputation? Jenna held out a slip of paper. "He left his number. Said to call if you're willing. Said he knows Mr. Rubin." It took me an hour to dial. The phone rang twice before a gravelly, measured voice answered. "This is Marvin." I tried to steady my voice. "Hi, I'm Odalyn. You called about Mr. Rubin?" "Ah, yes. He's my cousin. He sent me something you wrote. He thought I should read it." Silence. "Your essay. The one about being erased." I didn't know what to say. My fingers dug into the edges of the notebook I was holding. "I'm not offering miracles," he continued, "but I am offering help. I do a few pro bono hours each month. If you're open, I can assist with paperwork, maybe some options around your records. No catch." I waited. But that was it. No, "What did you do?" No, "Why did they kick you out?" Just an offer. I nodded, forgetting he couldn't see me. "Okay," I whispered. "Thank you." In the days that followed, I went to every free legal clinic the shelter posted on the bulletin board. I didn't understand half of what they said at first, but I took notes like I was cramming for the SAT. I asked questions, quiet ones, after sessions were over. I started drafting a resume, even though I didn't know what to put on it. There was a tremble in my hands each time I sat in front of a new form, a new adult asking my name. But I filled them out anyway, because for the first time I wasn't waiting for someone else to clear my name. I was preparing for the day I might have to do it myself. One afternoon, after I'd typed up 3 more journal entries at the library and printed a copy of my birth certificate Marvin helped retrieve, I checked my inbox. There it was, an email from someone I hadn't heard from in months, a girl named Aileen. We weren't close, but we had biology together. She always borrowed my notes. Her message was just one line. "You're trending again." That's all it said. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't click any links. I didn't open TikTok. I just closed the laptop, packed up my things, and walked out into the dusk. The air smelled like wet asphalt and spring flowers trying to bloom. I pulled my coat tighter and tucked my notebook under one arm. Because this time, it wasn't just gossip. It was legal. I thought gossip was cruel enough. But gossip, at least, had no letterhead. The envelope came on a Monday. Plain white, the kind you'd mistake for junk mail if it weren't for the shelter coordinator's tone when she handed it to me. "Looks official," she said, her eyes darting away as if just holding it made her uncomfortable. Inside was a letter from a law office in Columbus. I read it twice before I even processed what it said. It was a cease and desist, addressed to me. The accusation? Continued harassment and character defamation via social media and public commentary. It referenced a specific name, Leah's full name, and then the kicker. Said client claims emotional distress stemming from a campaign of slander perpetuated by Ms. Odlin Mavis. I laughed at first, not because it was funny, but because it felt like a cosmic prank. I hadn't even spoken Leah's name publicly. I hadn't posted a thing, not one video, not one status. I hadn't fought back. I'd disappeared. But apparently that wasn't enough. I folded the letter slowly, almost too neatly, and slipped it back into the envelope. That night, I skipped dinner and walked 4 blocks in the fading light to meet Marvin at his office. Really, just the back room of a local CPA who let him use the space for free on certain nights. He glanced at the letter for 10 seconds before sighing. "It's a scare tactic," he said, leaning back in the cracked vinyl chair. "But don't ignore it. Silence can be mistaken for guilt." I stared at the fluorescent light above us. "She's weaponizing air. I've said nothing, done nothing." "She's counting on that," he said. "She wants you scared, cornered, defensive." He tapped the paper with his knuckles. "This kind of thing, it's designed to make you question your own truth. But we can flip it. If she put this on record, it opens a door." Marvin spent the next half hour digging. He had contacts, quiet, retired, deeply curious. And what we found rattled me more than the letter itself. Under her mother's guidance, Leah had filed a police report 3 weeks prior in Franklin County. In it, she claimed that I had created anonymous Instagram accounts to threaten her and publicly harass her in DMs. There was no evidence, just her word and a few blurry screenshots of accounts that could have belonged to anyone. But now that her statement existed, I wasn't just a name. I was a file. I walked home that night in a fog. The air was colder than it had been in weeks. Maybe it was just me. At the shelter, I went straight to the shared bathroom and locked myself in a stall. I pulled out my phone, unlocked the journal app I'd used for months, hovered my finger over the delete option. I wanted to erase everything. All those entries, all those timelines, all those nights spent typing with trembling fingers, remembering every word Dad said, every smirk Leah wore like perfume. I wanted to be done with it all, but I didn't press delete. Instead, I slipped my phone into my jacket and wandered the streets until the orange glow of the bookstore window pulled me in. My shift started at 7 the next morning, but I knew Ted wouldn't mind me shelving a few books early. He liked quiet workers, and I liked quiet shelves. I'd barely made it through the second row of returned paperbacks when a woman walked up, her phone already aimed at me. "You're the sister, right?" she asked. "The one from TikTok?" My hands froze on a copy of The Grapes of Wrath. So she didn't wait for an answer. "Guess Leah was right about you after all. What kind of girl gets kicked out and then cries wolf a year later?" I didn't say a word. I just walked to the back room, sat on a crate of bargain cookbooks, and buried my face in my hands. That was the first time I cried in months. Not because of what she said, but because I'd started to believe maybe I was what they whispered. Maybe a lie repeated enough doesn't need evidence. It just needs volume. I told Marvin I was leaving Indiana the next day. I couldn't keep being a shadow of someone else's fiction. But before I could pack, I saw her. She was maybe 15, rail-thin, sitting on the shelter bench I used to claim. Her head was down, arms wrapped tight around herself like she could shrink into her own hoodie. I didn't ask what was wrong. I didn't have to. I walked back inside, grabbed the extra blanket from the donation shelf, and brought it to her. She didn't speak. Just looked up, eyes red and glassy, and nodded. As I walked back toward the bunk room, something heavy inside me shifted. I couldn't run again. Not when someone else might be learning how to disappear like I once did. I stayed, not because I was brave, but because something cracked inside me the moment I saw that girl. The one curled up on the bench behind the shelter, hoodie pulled tight like armor. She didn't need words. Neither did I. What held me in Indiana wasn't courage. It was memory. The next morning, I was restocking the front display at the bookstore when Marvin texted me, "Check your inbox, something's come up." I walked into the back room, sat down beside the delivery crates, and opened the email. Subject line, GoFundMe campaign, Leah's family. The preview was enough to make my stomach churn. Help Leah heal from years of abuse. I clicked. There it was. My face, cropped from an old family photo, the one from Leah's sweet 16. My arm was around her shoulder. She'd posted it once with the caption, "Sisters by Fate." Now it was grayed out, grainy, and repurposed beside paragraphs calling me unstable, manipulative, and dangerous. The fundraiser had raised over $11,000 in just 3 days. Worse, some of the comments underneath were from people I recognized, mothers of old classmates, distant relatives. One read, "This girl deserves peace. No one should live in fear of someone like that under their own roof." Another, "I know this family personally. What she went through, it's a miracle she's still standing." I wanted to scream. But the rage sat silent in my chest, thick and hot. At lunch, I met Marvin outside the courthouse. We didn't speak at first, just walked the square, him holding his paper coffee cup, me clenching my phone like it might break if I let go. "They're smart," he finally said. "Didn't use your full name. But between the photos, the story details, the town's size, it's a public smear campaign, disguised as a plea for help. Can we do anything?" "Not directly, not yet, but we build a case. Screenshot everything, archive the page before they alter it, track the donations and especially the comments." That night, I dug deep into the online rabbit hole. I pulled cached versions of the fundraiser, saved every comment that referenced me, even the vague ones. I compiled messages from people who had reached out in confusion or concern. Some asked if it was really me, some already believed it was. At the shelter, I asked to meet with the director, Ms. Turner. She sat across from me with the same gentle patience she always had, listening as I laid it out. No theatrics, just facts. When I mentioned the fundraiser, her jaw tightened. "We keep resident logs," she said. "Time-stamped, activity-based. I can issue a statement confirming your status here during the timeline they're claiming abuse occurred." My eyes stung. "Thank you. You don't have to thank me, Adeline. You're not invisible here." The next morning, a woman came into the bookstore while I was restocking the local author's shelf. She didn't say hello, just handed me a flyer. I unfolded it slowly. It was a photocopy of my old school ID, with the words, "Remember this face," scrawled over it in red ink. Below it was a cartoonish sketch of a monster, fangs and wild hair. I didn't rip it up. I didn't even crumple it. I walked to the break room, opened the file folder where I kept all my documentation, and slid it in. Proof. By now, I'd started assembling my own timeline online. Not a public blog, just a locked, organized drive. Shelter admission logs, class certificates, character references, screenshots of messages, legal definitions. My voice didn't need volume, it needed clarity. I was halfway through filing Marvin's notes when my phone rang. Blocked number. I let it ring once, twice. On the third, I picked up. "Odalyn?" I froze. It had been almost 2 years, but I'd know that voice anywhere. Gravelly, sharp-edged. "Dad, I need your help," he said. Just like that. No apology. No greeting, no explanation, just the same voice that once screamed, "You're a disgrace. Get out." I didn't say anything. "I wouldn't call," he continued, "but it's about the house. Things aren't good. I'll explain more, but I need someone who can help straighten this mess out." I looked down at my folder, at my documents, at the flyer in red ink, and for the first time in years, I wasn't the one who needed something. I didn't respond right away. I let the silence stretch, like a thread between us, thin, strained, and fraying fast. He repeated it, almost like he couldn't believe he had to ask again. "Odalyn, please, I need your help." I don't remember hanging up. I don't remember saying goodbye. I just stood there in the break room of the bookstore staring at the muted blue light of the exit sign, the hum of the mini-fridge filling the space where words failed. 2 days later, I was on a bus, heading toward the Ohio border. Not to reconcile, not even to confront. Closure, that's what I told myself. But somewhere between exit 84 and 85, I stopped trying to justify it. The meeting spot was neutral. A small cafe just off the interstate, the kind with dusty blinds, faded laminated menus, and a waitress who didn't ask questions. I arrived first, ordered black coffee I didn't plan to drink, and waited. He walked in 15 minutes late. No surprise there. His frame looked smaller than I remembered, shoulders hunched, suit too big like it used to belong to a man who thought he was important. His face had aged harshly, creased lines where his pride used to sit. He looked around, saw me, paused like he was checking if it was really me, then crossed the floor, slow like someone walking into confession. "Odalyn," he said, standing beside the booth. I nodded toward the seat across from me. "Sit." His hands trembled slightly as he set his phone down, followed by a manila folder. He cleared his throat, but the words didn't come easy. "We never meant to hurt you like that," he started. "We just didn't know." I said nothing. "It got out of hand," he continued, voice more brittle now. "Leah was just young, scared. After your mom passed, everything went sideways." I glanced at the folder. "Is that what you brought? Excuses?" He looked down at his coffee, like it held better answers. "We need your help. You're the only one who can fix this." I let out a breath, long and slow, and kept my voice steady. "You believed her without asking me a single question. Now you're asking for help without giving a single apology." He flinched, barely. Then, quietly, he said it. "She told us the truth. A few months ago, after her breakup, she broke down, said it was all lies, that she was jealous. Of you." I stared at him. "But she's my daughter," he added, as if that clarified something, justified it. So was I. The words hit harder than I expected. Maybe because it was the first time I said them out loud, not screamed, not begged, just said. He looked away, jaw tightening. You don't understand what it was like. She was breaking down, saying crazy things. Your stepmother said we needed to keep the family image clean. I was trying to protect her. I finished for him. He didn't deny it. Then he opened the folder. Inside were a few sheets, printed legal documents, fundraiser screenshots, an email chain. I didn't lean forward. There's a lawsuit now, he said. Defamation. People donated under false pretenses. There's talk of class action. They're looking at us, at Leah. And your name. It's in the comments. The TikTok reposts. If you don't issue a statement, if you don't reconcile publicly, you'll name me in the defense, I said flatly. He blinked. I leaned forward, voice low. Is this your apology? Or a threat? He hesitated. It's reality. I pushed my chair back slowly and stood. No, I said, slinging my bag over my shoulder. It's cowardice. Still is. As I walked past him, he said one last thing, barely above a whisper. You're stronger than all of us, you know. I didn't turn around. I stepped out into the cold Ohio air, the sky gray and heavy. But inside, something had shifted. No more blurred lines, no more wondering who I was up against. I came looking for closure. I left knowing exactly who I was fighting now. That cafe table was the last thing we'd ever share. After I walked out, I didn't look back. Didn't wonder if he stayed sitting there or left. Didn't even replay his words. I just felt this quiet certainty settle in me like a steady hand on my back. By the time I got back to Indiana, Marvin was already waiting with 2 folders and a new kind of silence in his tone. Focused, measured, prepared. We're going to make this count, he said. I nodded, not because I felt brave, but because I didn't feel afraid anymore. Not of them, not of what they might say next. They'd said it all, lied louder than I ever thought possible. Now it was my turn, without screaming. The meeting at the community center was small, just a folding table, a few chairs, some volunteer coordinators from the women's advocacy group. Marvin spread out the documents with calm precision. My journals, dated and signed entries, screenshots of social media posts from Leah's fundraiser, timeline comparisons between their statements and where I'd actually been. We think you should speak, one of the women said gently. Nothing dramatic. Just truth. I stared at the folder in front of me. I'd spent years writing it, piece by piece, day by day, never thinking anyone would see it. But maybe it wasn't just a journal anymore. Maybe it was a map, a record of the invisible years. The press conference was held in a room behind the courthouse, bare walls, buzzing lights, and one livestream camera set up in the corner. I stood at the podium in a thrifted black blazer and the same jeans I wore to work the night before. No makeup, no spin. I opened my notebook. At 17, I was called a prostitute by the people who were supposed to protect me, I began. There was no evidence, but there was no defense either. So I was erased, until now. I didn't cry. My voice didn't shake. I just read, calmly, page after page. I talked about sleeping on a bench, about vending machine crackers, about watching my name get dragged through comment sections and coffee shops alike. Someone from the back raised their hand. Do you want revenge? I looked up. No, I said. I want peace, but I won't get it by pretending none of this happened. That night, Marvin delivered the folder, the final one. Not to me, but directly to the legal firm representing the donors from Leah's fundraiser. It contained everything, my logs, my GED certificates, email timestamps, a notarized statement from the shelter. Their story had cracks. My truth had records. 2 days later, an investigation was opened. Independent, silent, but real. Leah went live on Instagram that evening, her face blotchy with tears, hair styled carefully like sadness was a brand. She started with, I never meant to hurt anyone. And somewhere halfway through, the comments turned, Did you see her speech? There's proof now. This isn't it, Leah. And then someone pasted the link to the live stream. Her video stalled, froze, ended without warning. Later that week, I received a final message. Not from Marvin, not from anyone I loved, but from him, my father. You humiliated us. I didn't even open the message, just saw the preview. Then I deleted it. No response. That weekend, after my shift at the bookstore, I walked back to the church where it all began. The bench was still there, old wood softened by rain and time. I traced my fingers along the carved words, You still matter. Then I pulled a pen from my bag and added beneath it, I know. I sat for a moment longer, letting the wind pass over me. It was quiet. Not the kind of silence that hurts, but the kind that heals. There wasn't a parade, no ribbon-cutting ceremony, no strangers clapping on the street. Just the hum of my kettle, the soft creak of floorboards, and Kyle setting a chipped mug beside my notebook. "Decaf," he said with a smile, already knowing I'd forgotten to drink water all morning again. I nodded, pulled my sleeves up, and looked out the window. The yard was quiet. Dew still clung to the grass, and the garden beds were full of late-summer basil and tired tomatoes that had fought to grow in sandy soil. I loved this land, not because it was perfect, but because I'd worked for every inch of it. This peace, it didn't arrive wrapped in apology or justice. It came slower, quieter, like learning how to breathe again. I was 22 now. A homeowner, technically. The papers were in both our names, but Kyle liked to say it was mine because I picked the house. Because I chose the creaky floors and uneven porch and painted the front door burnt orange, like warmth you could walk through. Sometimes I'd wake before sunrise just to sit on that porch with a blanket and nothing but silence. Not the kind of silence I once feared when I was 17 and alone, but the kind I earned. The kind that didn't ask anything of me. My father never called again. The last message I ever saw from him ended with, "You humiliated us." I didn't reply. There wasn't anything left to say. I didn't need an apology anymore, not because it didn't matter, but because I no longer waited for one. As for Leah, she disappeared from the internet weeks after the fundraiser refund announcement. The firm that processed the reversal used words like misrepresentation of charitable purpose and violations of donor trust. There were no formal charges, but their family name? It became a quiet whisper in town, an echo of something that once roared. I never filed suit. People asked me why sometimes. Why not go all the way? Why not take every last thing? Because dragging it back into the light meant dragging myself there too, and I'd spent too long clawing out of that shadow to step into it again. Instead, I wrote. One night, after Kyle had gone to bed, I stayed up and typed an essay I titled, "The Day My Name Came Home." I didn't edit it much, just told the truth. A woman from a survivor's publication emailed me a week later. She said, "This will be the closing piece of our next issue." And that was enough. Weeks passed. I kept working at the bookstore. Eventually, I took on a management role. Nothing major, just scheduling, inventory, helping teenagers shelve poetry without accidentally hiding it behind graphic novels. One Tuesday afternoon, a girl about 17 walked in, backpack slung over one shoulder, hair pulled into a nervous ponytail. She lingered in the nonfiction aisle too long, flipping pages like she wasn't reading anything. Eventually, she walked to the register where I was sorting paperbacks. "You wrote that thing," she said. Her voice was shaky, unsure. "About being called a lie. It helped me." I didn't ask questions. I just smiled and said, "Thank you for saying that." She nodded and left. That was all. But my hands shook for 5 minutes afterward. A month later, I drove back to Ohio, just for a day. I stopped by the old church, not for any service, but for the bench, the one that once held my weight when I had nowhere else to sit. The carving was still there, faint but stubborn. "You still matter." My line underneath it, "I know," was faded but present. I pulled a pen from my coat and bent down. Even when they don't say it. I didn't linger. I didn't need to. I walked back to the car, started the engine, and drove away, not because I was escaping, but because I had somewhere better to be. And if you're reading this, maybe you needed to hear it too.